this video, I'll be documenting my travels along the old Princetown Road, located in Prince Edward Island, Canada. So the old Princetown Road is one of the earliest colonial roads on PEI, connecting the capital of Queens County, Charlottetown, to the capital of Prince County, also known as Princetown. The exact date of the old Princetown Road's construction isn't known. It may have actually been created by French colonists back in 1733, but then later enhanced by the British in 1771. Our journey begins in Charlottetown. So directly north of the 500 lots was an area called the Commons, and it was reserved for extending the town when circumstances warranted the enlargement. The old Princetown Road originates from Great George Street, which is where we began our journey. And on the northeast corner of present-day Euston and University Avenue was the location of the Gallows, sometimes known as Gallows Hill. There are various historic maps from that era that depict the Princetown Road. There's this map from 1821, but a favorite of mine that I'll highlight later is this map from 1832. And as an aside, if you've ever wondered why the highway is called the Malpeque Road, it's because this was the route to Princetown, aka present-day Malpeque. So our journey began in Charlottetown, where we headed west on Great George Street as it turns into University Avenue, then to Malpeque Road, also known as the Route 2. Our first stop was in Springvale at a cemetery along the highway. Just wanted to highlight it's called the Princetown Road Cemetery, which is sort of a vestige of the road's previous name and purpose. Then we were back in the car and continuing westward through Hunter River, which according to the sign dates back to 1767, which no doubt was related to the Princetown Road passing through it. Just west of Hunter River, we finally diverge from the highway. In Hazel Grove, the Route 2 bends while another road continues straight, and that's the Princetown Road. The new route was completed around 1827 after people complained about the hilly nature of the old Princetown Road. Now I want to pop back to that map from 1832 and explain why I love it, and I'm mostly using it for illustration purposes in this video. Besides just being a contemporary and seemingly realistic map of the road, it also features descriptions of locations I've never heard of that sound like they're straight out of a fairy tale. Near the Hazel Grove area, there's mention of a forest cottage and also a valley of flowers, which is honestly nothing short of whimsical. So I have absolutely no evidence for this, but I'd like to imagine this area here was the Valley of Flowers. This is also the part where we first ditched the car and set off on foot along an ATV path. Based on the sign that there was a bridge out, we dressed for potentially having to cross some water. Two sections of the old Princetown Road are designated heritage places on PEI. I believe this is the first designated section. At first, the path was fairly well maintained, but then the ATV path veered off, likely because the bridge was out, and we continued straight on foot. All the while, we were walking more and more downhill. The walk was never really treacherous, but this was the first time you could sort of imagine how challenging it would be to be traveling this route 200 years ago with your wagon. After centuries of use, the road has also eroded down, or maybe the surrounding land has built up. But as such, the banks are sometimes several feet higher, and on them sometimes you can see evidence of previous human use, like this stone which has clearly been cut. We also really lucked out with the weather. It was a lovely warm fall day, and the leaves were just starting to change. And honestly, it was just the ideal time for a walk down a scenic dirt road. As I mentioned, the beginning of this walk was all downhill, and eventually our fortune had to turn, and then we had to walk uphill, and the quads were really burning. So it's here, near South Granville, that the Princetown Road seems to momentarily disappear. Sometime pre-1880, a small section of it seems to have been reclaimed as farmland, as in Meacham's Atlas of 1880, it's already gone. But we can imagine where it would cut across before connecting nearby by the South Granville Church. So we just drove the car around the corner to the South Granville Church, where we took a quick peek around before setting off on foot again. So this is the second section of the old Princetown Road that's designated, and this is also the section of the road that has a spooky local legend. The story goes that a Mr. John Hawkins was traveling this road once, transporting supplies from Charlottetown to the Black Horse Tavern near Margate with his ox-drawn cart. Among his supplies was a puncheon of rum. When he stopped for a break nearby, he heard a demonic laugh and the sound of hooves approaching, and then the devil himself appeared. The devil addressed Hawkins by name and gave him a blade to cut down the keg of rum. Hawkins obliged, and the devil pushed the rum over a steep hill where it crashed below. Then the devil disappeared, Hawkins' ox ran off, and he was left stranded. Eventually, he made his way to the tavern empty-handed. He told the people there of his story, and some men and him went back to the area of the encounter. As they approached, they began to find pieces of the cart, odd hoof prints, and there was a distinct smell of rum and sulfur. They looked down and saw a deep crevice that had never existed before, where they heard the devil clinking glass and laughing out to them. After this encounter, they named the area the Devil's Punch Bowl. But in all seriousness, this is a lovely little natural area. There's some walking trails, and it's looked after by a local watershed group. So if you're in the area, go check it out for a hike. And with that, we were back on our way, this time in the car and heading towards Margate. But before we quite got there, there's another lost piece of the Princetown Road in Clinton. The road seemingly ends at the Red Sands Golf Course, but based off of Meacham's Atlas of 1880, it seems this portion of the road has been gone for a long time. However, if you look at an aerial view, there is a tree line that directly follows where the Princetown Road is expected to be, and another fellow island social media account called Dirt Road Adventures of PEI actually previously documented their journey along the Princetown Road. And on their travels, they found an old path through the trees in Clinton. Unfortunately, we were not feeling brave enough to go knock on strangers' doors, so alas, we did not discover this hidden section of the old Princetown Road ourselves. Instead, we made a brief detour around the golf course, then continued on along the present-day Route 6 to Margate. In Margate, there's another road that's sort of reminiscent of the turnoff in Hazel Grove. So once you come over the hill and into the village, the present-day Route 6 veers off towards Kensington, while another road continues straight on over the horizon, and that, of course, is the route to Princetown. And then we encounter the infamous Black Horse Corner, the site of the former Black Horse Tavern that John Hawkins was trying to reach when he encountered the devil. I can't speak to the validity of this legend, but the Black Horse Tavern was real, and as the monument explains, it was the location of a tavern and inn in the early 1800s operated by Thomas Tuplin. Though I can't be sure, on my favorite 1832 map, there is a building depicted in Margate, and I wonder if this is a Black Horse Tavern and inn, because it would be important for travelers along this route to know where they could stay for the night. Then we continued on along the final stretch of road towards Princetown, with a stop or two when we saw a sign. Another interesting legend that's associated with the Princetown Road, with perhaps a bit more validity than that of the Devil's Punch Bowl, is the story of the Siege of Malpeque. The story goes that in 1797, Colonel Joseph Robinson, commanding officer of the Prince County Regiment of Militia, ordered the Prince County Regiment to muster. So musters were routine events where those eligible for militia service would be called to gather with their weapons, and they would practice military skills like marching, loading, and firing in unison. However, the Prince County Regiment was mostly made up of local farmers, and there was very little interest in these military exercises. And as a result, the muster didn't go to plan, as a group of the men actually consulted among themselves before demanding they would only muster if the colonel would give them the same land grant or lease terms as had been given to the people of Nova Scotia, and the colonel would ensure that they'd be kept free of any taxes. This was not only beyond the colonel's control, but he also probably wouldn't have done it even if he could. Instead, Colonel Robinson felt he had a mutiny on his hands, and he sent for Governor Fanning in Charlottetown to help him out. Governor Fanning, the Attorney General, the Deputy Secretary, the Sheriff of the island, other peace officers, and a team of about 30 independent troops of militia light horse would eventually set off 11 days later, taking the Princetown Road from Charlottetown to Princetown to enforce the law on the disobedient residents. This team left Charlottetown on the morning of September 5th, and they made it to Princetown about 40 miles away by 6 o'clock in the evening. The whole thing was actually pretty uneventful by the sounds of it. The apprehended Princetown residents were quick to apologize, and they assured the governor of their ready and willing obedience to militia laws. But it would be in 1860, during Land Commissioner's Court, that a tale of this event would be recounted, though with considerably more fanfare than actually occurred. And it was at this point that the name the Siege of Malpeque was applied. And after some more driving, we finally reached the end of the old Princetown Road, though it ends rather abruptly and kind of unceremoniously. But based on old maps, this was the boundary of Princetown royalty, where there would then be a series of grid-like roads similar to Charlottetown. But it didn't feel quite right to end our journey here. So we made a few quick turns and continued on into the village of Malpeque, then onto an area I refer to as the Princetown that was promised. As Princetown was to be the capital of Prince County, it was also laid out in a manner similar to Charlottetown, with a common area and what we in 2025 could imagine as a downtown core. It had a central administrative square to be called Dartmouth Square, and a grid pattern of blocks. This plan never really panned out, but various maps exist from the day depicting what it might have looked like. Instead, today Princetown Point is a quiet, mostly cottage community with marshes and lovely views of the Malpeque Bay. In the summer, this area is also a popular destination for kiteboarders. And with that, our journey from Charlottetown to Princetown, along one of the oldest remaining routes on PEI, comes to an end. Thanks for watching!